You know, this is getting tricky. Tons of people love to spam in my live streams. What are your thoughts on iOS 12? And the reason I've been so silent about the next generation of iOS is because I run out of ideas myself. In the past, I talked about what I wanted to see in iOS 11, and usually everything I ask for ends up not happening. But then Apple comes up with new things that I didn't even know I wanted, and now I'm very grateful for. So forgive me if my list is not very long or very diverse, but I'm gonna try my best to tell you what I would like to see in iOS 12. Now, I do think it's safe to say that a lot of the changes made in iOS 12 are likely going to affect iPhone 10 users more than iPhone 8 Plus and 8 users, which I know may suck for people who prefer just the standard 8 or 8 Plus because you don't want to pay all that money for the 10, but there's so much more potential with the 10, and there's so much more hardware to work with the iPhone 10, but I'm still trying to think of a few features that could work on both. So the first one that I'm actually very confused about is the fact that the iPhone 8, the iPhone 8 Plus, and the iPhone 10 are all now equipped with Bluetooth 5.0. This is a very new, interesting Bluetooth technology that we've seen Galaxy products take advantage of, and have now made it possible for one smartphone to send music to two separate Bluetooth devices. Now, this can work with speakers, this can work with headphones, but Apple has not taken advantage of this feature. Now, I just think that Apple, being so good at being able to get things to work together and making pairing processes easy, a common scenario I commonly would run into is that me and my girlfriend or me and my friend both have AirPods, but we want to listen to the same music. What if on iOS 12 there was a way to pair multiple pairs of AirPods to one source, and then me and my girlfriend can listen to the same song and both of us have our AirPods in? With Bluetooth 5.0, this is possible. I understand that the audio would not sound as good because now the phone has to split up the audio file and send it to two different places, but still. We have seen Samsung do it in the past, and I'm very jealous of that feature, and I think that via some very simple software rewriting, it could be very possible in iOS 12. That could definitely add a very noticeable update to your phone. The next thing, which I mentioned in my last video, is that I do think Apple needs to make the exception and say that while yes, the user only has one face, you should be able to at least add another person or two other people to your Face ID list. Now, of course, this should not be easy. You should still have to enter your passcode and stuff, but if you so desire, you should let your friend or close relative be able to access your phone via Face ID. This was a very convenient feature a lot of people used with Touch ID, but Apple claims Touch ID was only because you have multiple fingers. But we all know everyone was using the multi-finger technology with Touch ID so that other people could unlock their phone if you trusted them. The fact that that's no longer an option with Face ID, I think, is a little stupid, and it's kind of silly to act like, no, there can only be one user who can safely unlock the phone. If you want it to be that way, that's great. You're welcome to keep it that way. But if you want that option of adding another face or two other faces, I think iOS 12 should be able to add that. That's what operating systems should be good at, right? Giving users options. Now, my next request is actually kind of a sad one because it's something we were promised with iOS 11 and have not been followed through on. In fact, one of the most exciting things I read about iOS 11 when it first was released was that they were working on moving iMessages to iCloud, meaning that when people sent you pictures or videos, you would not have to download every single picture and video to your phone. You could start storing all of your iMessages in the cloud, which is something Facebook Messenger does, and I find that incredibly more convenient because what it means is when you get a new phone, you don't erase all of your old messages. For people who don't do the iCloud backups or the iTunes backups, when you get a new phone and you start it from scratch, even if you log into your Apple ID, all of your old text messages and iMessages are no longer on your phone anymore because iMessages are currently stored locally. They're delivered to all of the products in your ecosystem, but as soon as you update one of the products in that ecosystem, all of your text messages are gone. For instance, more recently for me, I got my iMac Pro. One convenient thing I really enjoy about macOS is that I can use iMessage on there and I can SMS text people on there as well. But when I first buy the iMac Pro, there is no messages in iMessage, even though I'm logged in, and I have to slowly have my contacts feed grow as people remember to text me after the date at which I booted up the iMac Pro. Being able to store all that in the cloud must be difficult to Apple because iMessage users are all over the world and there's literally a billion devices running iMessage. So trying to store all that in the cloud must be expensive expensive, and we've seen that option grayed out in the settings now, and I wish Apple would follow through on that, and I wish they would actually deliver it, not say that it's coming later, but actually say, nope, it's ready, we're about to announce it, the beta developers can have it already, it's coming. It's borderline unfair when you announce something for a software release, show the option in the settings, but it's grayed out, and then later in future updates, you don't even have the grayed out option anymore. It's like, come on, Apple, we were really looking forward to that, let's see you make it happen. Another thing that I kind of wanted in iOS 11, but did not get, still gonna bring it up though, is face chat bubbles. By far one of the best things I love about Android is the fact that when you're using Facebook Messenger and you leave the app, you can have a contact picture of the person you're talking to. It's just a tiny little insignificant bubble around the screen. So you can be browsing through Twitter, and then when you get a text message, it will pop up next to their face and you can tap to open it, respond, and then put it back away. I think that's incredibly intuitive and very easy to multitask because usually people who are doing two different things on their phones are typically browsing something, watching a video, while also texting someone else. I think that's one of the most common multitasking situations for smartphone users, and while there's a whole bunch of things I do not care about on Android, that's one thing that I really wish Apple would just copy and be like, okay, that's pretty smart, let's implement that into iMessage. Maybe not make it available to third parties, so not any messaging platform out there can do it, but if it was just iMessage, even that, I'd be totally fine with, and I would love to see that in iOS 12. Moving on to the next thing that I wish would happen and still has not happened after requesting it for, I believe, 3 years now in a row. It is ridiculous that in the camera app, we cannot change the frame rate and resolution of the video we're shooting at. Now, I know I've talked about that before, like we should be able to just 3D touch our camera setting where it says 4K at 60 or HD at 60 and be able to have all the different modes, opposed to going to the home screen, finding settings, scrolling down in settings to camera, then looking at recording formats and changing from there. Way too many steps. The difference this time is that I actually checked in iMovie, an app that, by the way, has yet to be updated for the iPhone 10. Yes, there's all these new apps still getting iPhone 10 updates, and yet iMovie has yet to be updated on the iPhone 10. When you go into iMovie and start recording something, the resolution and frame rate is in the corner of what you're recording, and you can tap on it to change resolution and frame rates. So Apple knows that's a convenient feature. They've implemented it into another app, but they've yet to update that app for the iPhone 10. For instance, you cannot record 4K at 60, you cannot export 4K at 60 in iMovie, and that part of the App Store feels completely and utterly neglected. It's very sad to see, and it's very disappointing to see that that frame rate and resolution changer is built into one of their apps, but not the camera app. Why, Apple? Why? I feel like I'm your biggest fan, but even that does not make sense to me. Anywho. Google, what the heck? My next request is that we remove the home bar that we keep seeing on our iPhone 10s. Now, I think it was important to have that at the start to first initially see that, okay, there's no home button, but you swipe up on this thing at the bottom, and then you get used to the gesture control. But now I feel like we've gotten to the point where, okay, we get how the gestures work, we don't need a bar on the screen at all times, and one thing that constantly bothers me about the bar is I'm worried about OLED burn-in. The fact that no matter what app I'm using, that bar is still there, it's staying on. In a lot of apps, it doesn't turn off, which often makes me worried that it's going to have a burn-in problem, as OLED displays are very fragile. And I would be a lot more relaxed if they just made the option, at least, maybe not require everyone to remove it, but in general accessibility, it could just say, hey, turn off the home bar, it doesn't need to be there. I think that would result in a cleaner UI, and I don't think it would confuse anyone. Everyone who's bought the iPhone 10 got used to gesture controls very, very quickly. And also, of course, one of the biggest complaints with the iPhone 10 is the gesture you have to make to access Control Center, which is probably the most controversial one. Having to reach up to the right ear of the device and pull down is not intuitive for a lot of people, and there's been lots of different theories about embedding it diagonally on the right or the left or something. I wish they would actually go more towards the way of what the iPad does on iOS 11, which is combine multitasking and Control Center into one single swipe. When you swipe up on a regular iPad running iOS 11, you see all the apps you're running and Control Center narrowed down on the side. I think that could be definitely possible with the iPhone 10. In case you've never tried it, when you are landscape in an app and you swipe down on the right side of Control Center, you can see that the iPhone 10 supports having a more narrow version of Control Center. Instead of having to reach to the very top of the device to access it, what if it was accessed just like you access multitasking? You pull up from the side, and perhaps the app slides are not taking up as much space, they're just more towards the top and a bit smaller, and then at the bottom of the screen we have our Control Center settings. You can scroll through those, you can customize them that way, but I think think that would definitely be a lot more intuitive than having people reach to the entire top of the device, because that can be awkward for a lot of people. I don't mind it. I have large hands, but a lot of people don't, so I think that's one change that would be a noticeable one, because it feels like we have the tradition of every time we change iOS upgrades, we have to make sure Control Center works differently every single time. In fact, I think for the past 6 generations of iOS, the way Control Center works is the best way to identify which version of iOS you're actually running. Now, of course, I just wanted to go over some of the classic enhancements that just should be included. For instance, Siri, of course, needs improvement. She's very behind the Google Assistant, which sadly is getting dumber for me every day, if you heard that little joke earlier. Did not plan that. Usually I'll just be talking normally and then the Google Assistants go off. It's very confusing, but still, there's a lot of contextual awareness that Siri doesn't understand, and I really hope that with iOS 12 being the iOS update that's going to be surrounding the HomePod, they can really focus on Siri being a major competitor against the Google Assistant and Alexa. And my last wish, which is actually something Apple has confirmed they're doing, is more information on your battery. Now that it's no longer a secret that when your lithium battery gets bad, Apple slows down your CPU in order for the device to last longer, which I believe, if you haven't seen my video on it, is totally justifiable. There should still be some settings within that battery tab in the settings that can tell you this is how many times the battery has been recharged. Now that it is degrading from its original size, we're down throttling it by this much so that your phone can last longer. And then perhaps in that little battery slide at the very bottom, it can be like, you can raise your CPU percentage by taking this to the Apple Store and getting that $29 replacement. Apple has claimed in their apology letter that they're working on an iOS update that's going to do that. That'll likely happen actually before iOS 12, but it's definitely something I think, given all the negative PR they got, they should include in the next version of iOS as a standard. More information about the battery. That's one cool thing about Android, is they show you how long you're approximately going to last. They give you a guess and how fast you charge and stuff like that. I think iOS is a little weak there, and with iOS 12, they'd have a lot of potential on making that better. Whew, okay, so I've really tried. I've really thought of a lot of things, but that's the most I got. I definitely don't think iOS 12 is going to be a super major update, but you know, I thought the exact same thing about iOS 11, and they always seem to surprise me every year. So what things am I missing? Let me know the kind of things you'd like to see in iOS 12 in the comments below, and I can't wait to read them, because honestly, every single year the software announcements are kind of what excite me, because I don't know what we're gonna see. Hardware is cool, but usually there's enough leaks supporting what's gonna happen. Software, very hard to know. So all your thoughts on that in the comments below, please. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.